So we know that Rosh Hashanah in the high holiday season has a grasp on the religious imagination, the religious participation of people. Clearly, it elicits more of a response, more participation, more people in the pews, and it on some level doesn't really need an explanation because that's just the way it is. But I wanted to look at how Rosh Hashanah is presented, how Rosh Hashanah is commanded in the Torah, how Rosh Hashanah is filtered through the lens of Chazal. Also, how Rosh Hashanah was celebrated by the Jewish people. And then also, look at a couple of sources for how Rosh Hashanah was celebrated by the Jewish people in the Bible, which is something we don't see all that often, and then also how that gets filtered down into our practice of Rosh Hashanah. And I would say that for many, Rosh Hashanah, it's the new year, it's the day of judgment, it is the shofar, there's a lot of apples and honey, there's a lot of new beginnings. All of this is true. Yes, and yes, and yes, and. But it didn't start out that way. And I would think that if there was, I would say, I guess I'd start by asking, two related questions. What is what is the defining mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah is number one. And what is the element of Rosh Hashanah that cannot be ignored or that must be present? It's a little bit of a trickier question because it's more in the liturgy. If there's one word of the liturgy of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the high holidays, what is it? So one is what's the most important mitzvah, and the second is what's the most important word, which is also the theme of Rosh Hashanah. Any reactions? Well, for mitzvah, I would venture that you're thinking of the one that people strive to hear. It's the one that's most out there, right?
Tshuva.
Well, that's actually interesting because Tshuva is the 10 days, but Teshuvah doesn't appear anywhere on Rosh Hashanah. It's called one of the 10 days of repentance, but there's no confession, there are no slichos, Teshuvah is actually absent. Being inspired towards Teshuvah is there because you have the wake-up call towards that, which is shofar. And we'll see shofar is the only element is the distinguishing characteristic of Rosh Hashanah in the Torah. The word, which I think captures the theme of Rosh Hashanah, is Hamelech, kingship. Right? We talk Avinu Malkeinu, right? That's not, God's kingship is not something that is unique to Rosh Hashanah. It is something that is part of any blessing that we say. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, right? God is the source of all blessing, king of the universe. Avinu Malkeinu is a prayer we say on fast days, right? We evoke these sentiments in order to feel this connection, not just in Rosh Hashanah, but on Rosh Hashanah, it is the Hamelech element that is set apart as being critical to setting the tone for the day. And just to give two examples, one is more liturgical, that on Rosh Hashanah, the Shacharit service, right? Usually on Shabbos, as in any davening, the service begins with the morning blessings and the verses of praise of Psukei de Zimra. And then you transition into the Shacharit service, which has the Shema and the Shmona Esrei, or the Amidah. Then you have the Torah, the service, and you have the Musaf. So usually there's a pitching change or a cantor change at the moment as you transition from Psukei de Zimra to Shacharis, right? So that usually, that can happen any morning, and sometimes in morning services, you have different people lead different parts of the service, but especially it's prominent on Shabbos morning, holiday mornings, where you have someone lead the Psukei de Zimra. First off, it requires someone who got there early enough to lead it. And then you also would then have someone transition for Shacharis. And the way that the moment of transition is with the words Shochein Ad on Shabbos morning, right? And then it has a tune that many are familiar with, right? Shochein Ad Marom V'Kadosh Shemo. That's the transition. On the holidays, it's in that same area of the service also, but it's a verse before, which it starts with the words Ha'el B'Sa'at Sumot, as a different tune. On Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the moment of transition is in the middle of the Shochen Ad phrase, but it begins with the words Hamelech. And there is a custom that the person who is going to take over the lead of the service at that moment starts walking towards the bima with a tune. There's a melody. A lot of people are familiar with it. Something like You're putting a lot of emphasis on God as the king. God is king. That's a major theme of Rosh Hashanah. And they have all sorts of Hasidic stories about the declaration of this word. And one of the rabbis fainted when hearing Hamelech, being so overwhelmed with awe at God as king. And so, the idea of God's kingship is also one of the blessings of the Musaf services there. But in practical terms, for those of us who aren't leading services or humming tunes or fainting out of awe of God's kingship, one of the changes to the liturgy between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur during the 10 days of repentance is that the third blessing of the Shemona Esrei, Ata Kadosh V'Shimcha Kadosh, it's a blessing about God's holiness, usually ends with the words Baruch Ata Hashem HaKel HaKadosh. Right? We recognize God is the holy God. Starting with Rosh Hashanah through Yom Kippur, that blessing concludes with the words Baruch Ata Hashem HaMelech HaKadosh. God is the holy king. Right, it's true. God is king, and God is, God is the holy king, and God is the holy God. And what's the difference? Well, actually, it's viewed as such a big difference that if you make a mistake and mistakenly say the words Hakel Hakadosh, holy God, instead of Hamelech Hakadosh, holy king, you have to repeat the Shemona Esrei. Right, there are all sorts of changes that are made to the Shemona Esrei during these 10 days of repentance. They're all important. They all have significance. We had a class on that last Shabbos. But the only one that is in halachic terminology, me'akeh, that makes a difference, that changes whether or not your Shemona Esrei is acceptable halachically or not, is that word. You have to say the word Hamelech HaKadosh, God is king. And so when we talk about where the rubber hits the road of the practical defining elements of Rosh Hashanah, we're going to see it's the mitzvah of shofar and God as king, which stand out as beyond all the rest. That's just by way of introduction, jumping into it, but now let's look at the sources and see how this develops. So look, the mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah, it's one of the holidays. We read about it in the Parsha of Emor, where we are told, source number 1, speak to the children of Israel in the 7th month, on the first day of the month, it shall be a Sabbath for you, a remembrance of Israel through the shofar blast, a holy occasion. You shall not perform any work of labor, and you shall offer up a fire offering to the Lord. So what are the defining characteristics? Well, Rosh Hashanah is like a Shabbat, which means it has the rules of a holiday, right? Shabbat and holidays have similar rules, not exactly the same, but similar rules. So you're not going to be doing any work. There's going to be Ishel Hashem. There's going to be a sacrifice for the day. And there's going to be this remembrance through the shofar blast. The idea that there's Zichron Truah. We're going to see the next verse uses the words Yom Truah. And the fact that it's called both Zichron Truah and Yom Truah is how the rabbis understand the fact that the shofar is not the most important, it is not critical. And that's why when Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbat, which it will next year, then you don't blow shofar on Shabbos, because it's not only about the sounding of the shofar, it's about the message of the shofar. And for that, you'll have to listen to my Rosh Hashanah sermon this year about what that message is. For those who won't be there, I'll hopefully have it available to send out afterwards. So that's the way it's presented. Second source, similar. This is in Parshas Pinchas, where the holidays are also mentioned in terms of what are the defining characteristics. So v'chodesh hashvi b'echad lachodesh mikra kodesh yeh lachem kol malacha avodah lo sasu yom truah yeh lachem. Same idea. 7th month, first day. It's a holy gathering, no work, and it's a day of truah. All right. So that Rosh Hashanah is a holiday, no work, sacrifice, and in particular, there's a shofar message or shofar blowing, which is required. So, right away, this is something I was talking to a friend just the other night, right? That when you think about why is Rosh Hashanah in the 7th month? Why not in the 1st month? It's kind of weird that the beginning of the year, the beginning of the year is in the 7th month. And part of this, I believe, comes from the fact that Rosh Hashanah is a Jewish holiday that commemorates something universal. And this gets us into the on-ramp of how God's kingship is the idea of Hamelech, God as king, is so critical to Rosh Hashanah. So,
but doesn't it have anything to do with when they left Mitzrayim? Sorry for interrupting.
Well, that's why Nisan is the 1st month. Right. But why not have a competing case that you could leave the beginning of the Jewish experience is the 7th, is Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Teves, Shvat, Adar, Nisan is the 7th month from the beginning of the year. Why don't the two correlate better? And part of that is that the fact that Rosh Hashanah, and this is how I understand it, Rosh Hashanah, that date on the calendar is not a Jewish date. The Rosh Hashanah is a celebration, is a commemoration of, as we say in the Machzor, each time we blow shofar in Musaf, Hayom Haras Olam. It's the birthday of the world. What do we say 3 times, right? Hayom Yamid B'Mishpat Kol Yitzurei Olamim. This day, God takes a stand in judgment of all the creatures, in Kevanim, in Kavadim, maybe like children, maybe like servants. If God's looking at them like children, then have mercy like way a father has mercy on children. If like a slave, then we recognize that you, God, are in control, and the master will make a decree and a judgment, a verdict for everyone. Until you favor us and bring forth our judgment as the light, revered and holy one. So, in a sense, when we conclude about our judgment, and we want favor us, we're not really only talking about Jews on Rosh Hashanah. We're talking about the universe, and we're going to see this idea developed a little bit further. It's the Mishnah that develops this, but Rosh Hashanah, there's no judgment in the Torah. Right? There's no new year in the Torah. In the Torah, there's a holiday on the 7th month that has a shofar sounding. That's the mitzvah component. That's the Judaization of the celebration of the new year, which took place on 1 Tishrei. Didn't have a name when it was created, but the birthday of the world, the universe was created, or the Torah timelines. Significance of the universe starts when? The 1st day of Tishrei, which is the 1st day of the 7th month of the Jewish calendar. So, Rosh Hashanah is not intrinsically, it's only a Jewish holiday. And therefore, when we get to that day on the calendar, we've now co-opted it onto our Jewish calendar. Passover is in the 15th day of the 1st month, and other holidays follow that way as well. But Rosh Hashanah is on the 1st day of the 7th month on the Jewish calendar. Rosh Hashanah, that date, which has significance for everyone, comes up on that day. And so I think even by the choosing of the date and putting it in the middle of the Jewish calendar is to highlight this concept also that in addition to Rosh Hashanah being a Jewish holiday, a day of no work, a day of shofar, there is this kingship component which is going to have a universal element, as we're going to see in a little bit. And that's the fact. Why is Rosh Hashanah on the 7th month of the Jewish calendar? Because on the 7th month of the first day of the 7th month on the Jewish calendar, that's when we celebrate the creation of the world. Yom Hayom Harat Olam. That's when we celebrate the birthday of the world. And it fits in. The Rabbi Eliezer in the Talmud, it's not one of the sources, but it's Rosh Hashanah 27a, has the opinion that the world was created in the month of Tishrei, which works out very well. Now, there's another rabbi who says the world was created in the month of Nisan. That's a little bit more complicated. That doesn't fit into this presentation. Now, how do you argue it when the world was created? Mostly because no one was really there, and it's all by tradition. But I think that this idea of the world being created with Tishrei, and Tishrei, the 1st day of Tishrei being the anniversary of the creation of the world, and how we have approached the judgment and the kingship of the day as applying to everybody, is something that we fits into the scheduling of Rosh Hashanah. The fact that we look at it as a new year, but we're starting it in the 7th month, is because the Jewish calendar has its own rhyme and rhythm. And the anniversary of the creation of the world, of the birthday of the world, of the judgment of the world is taking place on the 1st day of the 7th month. So that's a third aspect of Rosh Hashanah, which comes from the dates. So you have Rosh Hashanah as a holiday, Rosh Hashanah as a day of shofar, Rosh Hashanah as a celebration of the creation of the world and God as king. And now let's take it into a little bit, see how this plays out in some of the later sources. This is what the Torah presents. This is how it is introduced. Now let's see how it is applied. So when you think about it, we don't really see much celebration of Jewish holidays in the Bible. Now, a major exception to that is, Shabbos. We see Shabbos described and Shabbos being violated when they went out to collect man on that first Shabbos. We see Passover, right? We know that there was an initial Passover, but a year later there was a Passover. We know in the book of Joshua there's mention of Passover, and they didn't really celebrate Pesach and bring the sacrifice during 40 years in the desert. So you have Pesach has an appearance, but we don't really know how Jews celebrated other holidays, right? You don't really have it recorded in the books of the prophets about, about what Yom Tov was like for biblical Jews. Now, we know what the Torah says, and we would imagine that some of our ancestors would appreciate and understand some of the things we're doing. But this idea of thinking about what biblical Jews, how they celebrated, we don't have that many too many sources. Just by in terms of how Jews have been practicing and worshiping and celebrating throughout history. Some of you may have been. I was just actually there over the summer. There's a near Ein Gedi. There's a kibbutz Ein Gedi in Israel, and on the kibbutz they've done a archaeological excavation of a synagogue, which goes back into the they say as early as the 5th century. And what they've excavated, there are a lot of similarities, because they have a place where there was an aron, and they have a place where they've identified the bima, and they also have uncovered a fresco of the equivalent of a donor wall of who gave money to the shul. So so that's nice. For the last 1,600 years and so, we've had a lot of similarities, but it's not the same as how did what did they serve on Rosh Hashanah in biblical times? Was it tegelach or was it tzimis? Which of the sweet foods were being served? So we don't have that much, but we do have an account in the book of Nehemiah, right? The book of Nehemiah is telling the story of the Jewish people in the period of the early Second Temple. Book of Nehemiah is one of the books of the writings. It's the Ketuvim. It's not the Nevi'im, but there are references to some of the Nevi'im there as well. But it's one of the books of the Ketuvim in the tripartite division of Tanakh, of the Bible. But in Nehemiah Ches, they tell a story that's taking place. That's taking place on Rosh Hashanah. It's taking place on during the month of Tishrei. Just to set the historical context a little bit more, we know that the Jewish people were given permission by the Persian king to return. Most of them did not return, something we can relate to. They were very comfortable in exile, in the diaspora. They started to return. It was usually the poor families that went back, and it was a bit of a rocky start. And so you ended up having these, you have this small community trying to establish itself in the Second Temple. So it describes that all of the people, source number 4, gathered what was called the Water Gate, and they said to Ezra the scholar to bring the scroll of the law of Moses, which the Lord had commanded Israel. Right? They want to hear from the Torah. Right? So Ezra, right, brings the Torah before the people. He's reading the Torah when? On Rosh Hashanah, right? The first day of the 7th month. And, he reads it in the street, and everyone is there and they're listening. And he stands on a little bit of the verses between 2 and 9 are on the source sheet, but it says that he stood on a little bit of a migdal eitz. He stood on a little bit of a stand so people would be able to see him and hear him, and it lists the community leaders who were there. And it says that he opened up the Torah, and it says that when he opened it, people stood. This, gets to the whole discussion: should we stand when the Torah is read, or is it okay to sit? We practice that it's allowed to sit, but here they're reading the Torah, and Ezra says the brachos, and everyone says Amen, and they're reading from the Torah. And now this is now Nehemiah. Nehemiah and Ezra speak to the people, and they say about this day, the day they're gathering on, the first day of the 7th month, which is Rosh Hashanah, right? Hayom Kodeshu Lashem Elokeichem. Today is your holy day for the Lord. Al tisablu ve'al tivku ki bochim kol kishamam v'sivrei haTorah. Because, and don't be sad and don't cry. It seems that the people were moved to tears when hearing the declarations, the admonitions, the rules of the Torah. They felt some guilt. And so they were crying, and no, today is a happy day. And they said, no, go, l'chu, ichlu mashmanim, ushsumam takim. Go home and eat fatty foods and drink sweet drinks. Yilshilchu manos le'enachon lo, and send portions to those who doesn't have anything prepared. Right, almost sounds a bit like Purim, shalach manos, but the idea is everyone should be able to celebrate. Ki kadosh hayom la'adonenu, today is holy. Al te'atzvu, don't be sad. Ki chedvas Hashem hi ma'uschem. For your being joyous for the Lord, that is your strength. That's how today should be. That's how today should be celebrated. So here we have a biblical example of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah possibly turning into a day of awe and trembling, crying, guilt, and instead, no, that's not the way it should be. And we see the first mentionings of some of the fact of the foods that we're going to eat on Rosh Hashanah. They should be delicacies. They should be sweetness. We see the day turning into one of celebration and joy. And so that brings, we started by introducing the mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah as presented in the Torah. We noticed that the date is the first day of the 7th month, which recognizes that we're commemorating an anniversary of the creation of the world, which presents us with a universal element. We see that in its celebration, Rosh Hashanah is meant to be a happy day, one of joy and not sadness or trembling. So now, what did our sages make of these biblical texts? How do they present Rosh Hashanah? We still haven't really even talked about we haven't talked about the idea of judgment at all yet. Maybe it emerges from the fact that they were worried in the Nehemiah story. So if we look into the way the rabbinic understanding of this, found in the Talmud, found in the Mishnah, so we have the fact that we're presented with Arba Rosh Hashanah Heim. The Mishnah at the beginning of Rosh Hashanah says there are 4 Rosh Hashanahs, right? So the idea of a Rosh Hashanah shouldn't be viewed as so unique. There are 4. It's they're fiscal years. There are years that commemorate or count the reign of kings, right? There are agricultural fiscal years. There are financial fiscal years. There are temple fiscal years, and there's a years, New Year's for fruit, and Echad B'Tishrei, 2nd line, 4th word in Hebrew, Rosh Hashanah Lashanim Lashmitin LaYovos Antios LaYerakos. There is this beginning of the year for the calendar year, which is for the sabbatical years and the Jubilee years and the like. On some level, Rosh Hashanah is one new year among several, and so how do we distinguish this in a more practical purpose, more than just changing our calendars? So the Mishnah continues, Ba'arba prakim ha'olam nidon. The world is judged 4 times. Even judging happens more often. Pesach, there's judging on the wheat. Shavuos, the judgment on the fruit of the trees. Rosh Hashanah, it's also interesting. It calls this holiday Rosh Hashanah. Everyone is going to be passing. Kol ba'ei ha'olam, the whole world passes like sheep before the shepherd. And then Sukkot, there's judgment on water. So we have the idea of there is a our calendar year is being is being transitioned, is being celebrated on Rosh Hashanah, the Rosh Hashanah, and there is this idea of judgment on Rosh Hashanah. There are other judgments also, but the judgment of the entire world is taking place on the first day of Tishrei. So the Chazal, the rabbis in the Mishnah, pinpoint the first day of Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah, as a calendar phenomenon and also a judgment of the world phenomenon. They take it they take it forward, and in particular the fact that they look at this as a day of universal judgment, not just judgment for the Jewish people. And then you have the other more focused days of judgment for other aspects of existence. Questions, comments, because we're going to transition now so that how practically this became expressed in the rules and laws and customs of Rosh Hashanah being celebrated, highlighting that there's not just one way to celebrate Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so we've seen Rosh Hashanah as a day of judgment. We've seen Rosh Hashanah as a day of joy. So which is it? And so in true Jewish fashion, the answer is going to be both. We thrive in the tension where the two parts meet. And so, for example, Shulchan Aruch, Code of Jewish Law, says that we wash and get haircuts on Rosh Hashanah Eve. Some have the custom to immerse in the mikvah on Rosh Hashanah Eve. Some places have the custom to visit graves and say an abundance of pleas there and give charity to the poor. So you have a couple of types of ways of preparing. There's the physical, making ourselves more proper and festive. And you also have the petitions and the mitzvos and the focus on being as good as we possibly can, get those last minute good deeds in. And the Mishnah Berurah, highlights that these are two different distinct pathways towards preparation. We wash and get haircuts on Rosh Hashanah Eve to show that we're confident in God's kindness that He will judge us favorably. Right? If we think we're going to go, if we're going to be found guilty, why should we even bother to care anymore? No, we get dressed up and we look our best, and because we're ready to celebrate. Nevertheless, one should not wear fancy silk and linen clothes like other holidays so as to maintain a feeling of dread in the face of judgment. Wear merely nice white clothes, right? We're fancy but not too fancy. That's how the Mishnah Berurah understands this. Now, some understand this a little differently because the Shulchan Aruch doesn't necessarily mention any equivocation. It kind of mentions two different parallel approaches: get dressed to the nines, but also take care to perform any of those last mitzvot, and also the laharbot bo betchinot, when it talks about going to graves and saying an abundance of pleas, it's kind of that other thing is on the one hand, preparations for Rosh Hashanah smack of confidence in the new year, and at the same time we're also kind of begging for our lives. It's kind of this dual emotional state. It is celebration, and it is and there is also petition. And I think that the idea of, so how did we get to these very disparate ways of approaching it? I think a lot of it comes from the idea that's mentioned in the Gemara in source number 8, and is one that we're very familiar with. We haven't really touched upon it yet, but it's this idea of signs, symbolism being very significant when it comes to Rosh Hashanah. Right, Abaya said, source number 8, now that you said that an omen is a significant matter, a person should always be accustomed to seeing these on Rosh Hashanah: squash, fenugreek, leek, shard, dates, as each of these grows quickly and serves as a positive omen for one's actions during the coming year. Right, it seems that Rosh Hashanah, in particular, understood by Abaya, which is kind of the rabbinic understanding of Rosh Hashanah. We know what Rosh Hashanah is. It's a Torah obligation, and it's a holiday, and it's a day of shofar, and it's a day of God's kingship, and that makes it understood as a day of judgment. How should that be expressed? Well, find the ways to express that in ways that will make it most meaningful. Whether it be the sweet stuff or whether it be the things that grow quickly, which serve as a positive omen. We're trying to do things that evoke the right sentiment to start the year off the best way possible. And I think that we have seen the types of signs explode, right? So, for example, if I would ask you about the types of foods that we eat on Rosh Hashanah, people jump. The idea of honey has become very significant. The idea of the sweet New Year, and then the apple dipped in honey is kind of interesting. Where who was the first person to do that? Apples certainly have a blessed symbolism, but you got to wonder. The apple growers must have done a good job of getting that presented. It's kind of like the dairy farmers on Shavuos, the apple people and the honey people on when it comes to Rosh Hashanah. Especially interesting enough because the land flowing with milk and honey that the Torah describes is probably not describing bee honey. It's describing date honey, and that's why dates also appear in the symbolic fruits of Rosh Hashanah. Another point of information with which you can use this obscure knowledge to impress your friends. It talks about milk and honey. So you think milk and honey is milk that we drink from a cow, and honey that comes from bees. So the honey is likely honey that comes from dates, because that was much more prevalent in Israel. What about the milk? So we think milk and honey, that's the cow's milk. So I heard an Israeli tour guide point out that if the honey is date honey, it doesn't make sense for the milk to be cow's milk. And we stopped at a fig tree and pulled off a fig from the tree. And if you pull the stem off the fig, fresh figs, there's a white liquid. And when they talk about a land flowing with milk and honey, it's very possible that it's referring to figs and dates instead of milk and honey. Also works out better because if Jews are so fleishik of people, we eat all the time with all these holidays. How do you have the milk? So now you can put the figs with the meat and everything's fine. All right, but the symbolism of symbolism being significant, as introduced by Abaya, and so therefore Rosh Hashanah, he's basically advising people find the things that will be harbingers or inspire you to a positive new year and engage in those. And it is the symbolism of the foods and the fruits and what we wear and what we see and what we do that's meant to significantly shape how Rosh Hashanah is meant to be observed. The idea of tashlech, of being near water that will flow away, that our sins will flow away. These are all simanim. These are all types of behavior which are symbolic. But is it joy or is it trepidation? Well, we saw the Mishnah Berurah, get dressed up, but not too dressed up. And here we see the Shulchan Aruch also mentioning this idea that you should eat, drink, and rejoice on Rosh Hashanah. And we don't fast on Rosh Hashanah. However, we should not eat until fully satisfied, because we don't want to be lightheaded. And Rosh Hashanah requires a sense of awe, right? We don't want to be too lightheaded. You may have seen this translated into people say on Rosh Hashanah, you shouldn't take a nap on Rosh Hashanah. Maybe there's a practice that developed idea. Good advice: don't take a nap. Why not take a nap? Because you don't want to have a sleepy year. So they find on some level is really make your day as meaningful as possible. So if the choices are take a nap or talk lashon hara, it's probably better to take a nap than to not take a nap. Risk the sleepy year instead of the gossipy year. But there is this idea of recognizing that the day should be meaningful. And while we're celebrating, we always have this drawing back because of we're concerned about what may happen. Interesting that the Shulchan Aruch says about eating and drinking and enjoying, maybe not fully, but what does the Ramah say? Rabbi Moshe Isserles, which is the Ashkenazic comment on the Shulchan Aruch. Some say it's a mitzvah to fast in Rosh Hashanah. We seem to have everyone is proposing what's the best way to celebrate Rosh Hashanah to make it more meaningful. The idea of fasting on Rosh Hashanah, some say it's a mitzvah to fast on Rosh Hashanah. Some do. I would say most don't. so much so that many people are concerned not even to fast half day. Usually, in general, typical Shabbos, you go to shul in the morning and you're kind of done by midday. And then, the idea of many people don't eat before the davening. So when they make Kiddush after davening, it's the first time they're eating for the day. On Rosh Hashanah, sometimes the service can go much further, much longer, right? COVID had a way of curtailing or compressing the services, and the likelihood is our services don't go as long as they used to. But in some places, we even see the description of some of the early rabbinic authorities, going back 600-700 years, talking about shul lasting, till early afternoon. Wait a second, you don't eat before davening, you don't get done with davening until 2-3 in the afternoon. Isn't that like fasting? And sometimes in the yeshivas, they have this issue because they go, the prayers extend further into the afternoon, because they figure, what else do you have to do? You don't want to be stuck with doing nothing. You don't want to be tempted to take a nap, to spend the whole day in shul if you have the patience and the energy. So some places will make kiddush before shofar so that they will be eating before it gets too late in the day, because they don't want it to be considered fasting. But Rabbi Ma says, no, you are allowed to fast. So we have kind of this tension as to, do we jump into the celebration or do we hold back because of the judgment? And I think elu va'elu, these are both the appropriate responses, and the practical application is to find that sweet spot between the two. And I mentioned on various occasions that I think that's what Psalm 2 verse 10 is doing, where it says, Ivdu es Hashem b'yirah v'gilu b'irada. Serve God with awe and rejoice while trembling. Right? Some of us, when you hear Ivdu es Hashem, there's a verse from the Psalm Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha, serve God with joy, which is another aspect. But here, Psalm 2 talks about this idea of being filled with awe, but rejoicing while trembling. The idea that Rosh Hashanah is a significant day. It's a day that announces itself. It's a Jewish holiday which announces itself with shofar, because it is there to announce itself to the whole world, because it is the anniversary of the birthday of the world, and therefore the whole world is judged. And this is cause for both celebration and trepidation. And putting that all together and providing guidance as to how that can be celebrated has been an ongoing conversation and practice in Judaism. Started already, we see in the biblical time, in Nehemiah and Ezra, telling people, don't worry so much. This is a great day. It's a celebratory day. And the various customs and practices, and looking at making the various symbols as pathways into experiencing this and feeling this, while at the same time being held back sometimes with this awe and dread as to what the new year may bring. And so that's why I think that the verses that introduce Rosh Hashanah and the setting of the date and the fact that it's on the Jewish calendar, we are now celebrating the anniversary of creation of the world, the birthday of the world, sets the tone. And when all is said and done, what we're trying to do is create the perfect package of a celebration that is Gilu Birada, rejoicing while trembling, to start the year off the best way possible. So Rosh Hashanah, very familiar, but it is the product of the distilling of various emotions and various commemorations, leaving a lot up to us to find the most optimal way to greet the new year.